All right. Woo! We are here. Tonight seemed like a perfect evening for some bourbon and some...
it's a red beer.
That's a red beer. That's Kat's go-to.
Chelada.
Chelada. What does that even mean?
It's got chelada in it. Or it's clamato.
It's got gelato in it. Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
you know.
Real self-explanatory. What is that? It's bourbon. What's in it? It's got bourbon in it.
It's a Bud Light with clamato in it. And the thing is, you can't just mix Bud Light and tomato juice or Bud Light and even clamato juice and get quite the right mixture and flavor. It's
so you're saying Budweiser did it right.
Yeah, they did it right.
Guys and gals, excuse me. Welcome to this week's YAWA. It's that time again, and we've got a couple of cool announcements. We've got some really, really great questions. Thank you, everybody that sent questions in. I think we're in the did we top 100 this week?
I don't know if we quite hit 100. It was really close, though.
It's a ton, and all that means is that y'all really enjoy this, and you enjoy and you respect and
trust our opinions.
Trust is a great word.
Our answers.
As I'm just a duck. Thank you for sending in the questions. I'm sorry for those of you that we don't get to. Check out Patreon. We'll mention that a couple times when it's good to be mentioned, but definitely check that out if you don't hear your question answered here tonight. We're doing that on the daily, and it's a good place to ask. So
yeah, especially if you have a question that's burning a hole on your screen and we're not getting to it because we can only get to so many questions, definitely feel free to head on over to our online dog training community and ask your question there because it will get answered.
100%. All right, guys. So to start off, I want to say thank you to our patrons.
Since we just mentioned them.
Yeah, this is kind of a segue in that direction. We have just over 200 patrons now, which is absolutely fantastic. It is crushing we kind of floated around 100 for a while. And in the last couple months, it's absolutely blown up. Just over 200 patrons. You guys are the guys and gals that are helping continue to feed this content. All of the equipment, all of the money that goes into Patreon buys equipment, pays for editing, pays for everything that goes into this. Every dollar spent there goes directly back into creating more content. So thank you, everybody that signed up on Patreon.
Whether you're a $5 supporting the content or a $50 VIP where you get phone calls, all of you are awesome. All of you are helping continue this content. So without further ado, let's answer some questions.
I think that
this is a good question because it's going to segue into what you want to talk about.
Fine.
I know. I can
bring on the question.
I can read his mind.
What do we got?
From Catherine Cromwell on Facebook. Hi, Catherine. You show Thunder being with an older dog. Do you recommend allowing free range of a 8 to 10 week old puppy to be with an older dog? Since their teeth are so sharp, are you not afraid of the older dog hurting the puppy? So with our older dogs, we're pretty confident and comfortable with how they're going to interact with our puppy. We always advocate not only for Thunder so that he doesn't get hurt by the older and bigger dogs, but we also advocate for the older dogs like Grandpa Rex and any of them that if Thunder's just pestering and not giving them a break, we say, okay, Thunder, it's time to stop trying to bite their ears and bite their face and go lay on your dog bed. Try and redirect his focus to something else with a toy and his dog bed or a chew bone. And if worst case scenario, he just can't cut it out, he can go spend a little time in his crate and think about it for a little bit and then come back out and see if he can behave a little bit better with the rest of the dogs.
Yeah, with the puppy aspect of things, a lot of it comes down to conditioning the right behaviors, which in order to condition the right behaviors, sometimes it just is involving preventing the conditioning of the bad behaviors. So with the puppies, being out, it becomes a big advocating for both sides of that. So,
which leads to this next question.
Okay.
From Christy Rains.
Mm-hmm.
Our 8-month-old male GSP loves to play chase, keep away, and play fight with our friends coming on 2-year-old male GSP. We have a friend who was severely bitten separating his 2 intact DK males when their play fight unexpectedly turned serious for the first time. Do you allow your male dogs to play fight outside the house and during off time, not hunting? Any tips for keeping it friendly, preventing it from turning serious?
Well, I can tell you that that is exactly how I lost the tip of this finger. It was a play fight gone wrong. I have all of my fingers.
But in all seriousness, the tips that we have for not allowing it to escalate and to keep it friendly and preventing it from turning serious is we don't let it happen at all. We don't let our dogs face fight. People call it face fighting. We don't let them roughhouse. Whether it's inside, definitely not, or even outside. We don't want it to escalate because they're dogs and their way of naturally communicating with each other is through body language. And if one of them doesn't want to back down, it can easily escalate because the other one doesn't want to back down. And then it's a fight because dogs are ultimately descendants from wolves and they have that pack mentality, and somebody, when things get riled up, is going to try and put somebody else in their place. And if the other dog doesn't want to be put in its place, they're going to have a go about who's actually more dominant.
Yeah, some dogs can get along and do that for years and whatever until something happens. Just like you said, the situation.
We just had a client of ours actually call us that his 2 half-sisters, that they've gotten along for years and just all of a sudden they don't get along anymore. There
were some issues a little bit in the beginning and they came in for training. We were able to kind of work through that. And now a couple years later, at least 2 years later, now they're back to the point where they're having these discrepancies. Now, I'm not there. I don't see what happens 100%. And I think part of the situation that he and I talked about was that he didn't 100% see what happened. He said he felt like it was pretty unprovoked, but there is times where they get unsupervised time. And I think that becomes kind of a dogs go entertain yourselves, and when dogs...
It's the easy button.
Yeah, when they're left to their own devices, they act as dogs do, which sometimes involves a dogfight.
Yeah. And so I would say limiting the way that your dog is interacting with your friend's dog would be your best bet. Not letting them play chase and keep away and interact in that play fighting manner, because it can easily escalate. Your 8-month-old can get a little bit older. That testosterone can really kick in. And then it becomes more show of dominance and not necessarily truly playing anymore. And that's when a fight could break out. And we definitely wouldn't want you guys to get severely bitten either.
Yeah, it takes a second to go from that was fun to it's no longer fun.
And breaking up a dog fight is no fun.
No. And I've even talked to other breeders that have different opinions on how dogs should be allowed to interact. And when you have more than usually 2 dogs, you get into the pack zone. And some people raise them as such and allow different dogs to set hierarchies within them. And that, again, to me, is the easy button. It says, okay, go figure it out for yourselves. Well, yes, they will figure it out for themselves. But the question is, what is going to happen in that
There's definitely going to be some fallout. I mean, we were talking about Thunder in the last question. If we just said, they're going to straighten themselves out and figure it out for themselves, he could easily get snapped or bit or, lose an eye because it was a serious altercation, and got taken a little bit too far.
He'll learn. Well, he will, but at what cost? That's the question too, and we're more about that. Like I just mentioned before, developing good habits by preventing the bad ones from becoming habits. So, that ounce of prevention becomes a pound of cure. So, or is better than however it's said. I don't know. Something to that effect. Put
it in the comments if you know what the real saying is.
Yeah, come on, help me out here. We're just looking for, if we're having that little bit of forethought, we can potentially prevent something that could be really bad. Now, you may never have any issues. You may have always raised your dogs to entertain themselves and do their things, but there are going to be some people that end up with dog fights and get bit or lose fingers or whatever. You know, I mean,
yeah, and we get called out for generalizing our information. Well, that's because for the most part and for the general population, these are the answers. It's the rare case that dogs can interact and play fight and play chase and keep away and never have an issue.
They'll all do it right up until they don't. And for me, it's that it's the fallout of that I don't really want to deal with, you know. And
you're just lucky up until this point that it hasn't happened to you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And the next part of that goes into when it does happen, you end up with situations like somebody getting severely bit. Now, I will say we have dog fights happen. Dogs have small, you know, situations where they grump at each other or stuff happens. We have dogs around. Yep.
They're dogs.
And we're prepared to deal with that. And then there are still situations where I get bit or something happens or whatever, but that's very few and far between because we're pretty good at breaking up the fight and knowing
and reading the dogs
where the danger zones are and
reading their postures and body language and recognizing that, hey, they're kind of getting stiff and not really comfortable with this.
We can stop a lot of stuff
situation.
before it happens.
Yep. Nip it in the bud.
So I think that was a great question. Hopefully we answered it well enough.
Yes, I think that we did. Next question. This was a good one. Somebody's been watching our Instagram story, which we love it when people ask questions about our stories. So they were asking, I found it here a second ago. I saw in your IG stories that you give your dogs a bone while in their kennel. What brand do you use? Our 7-month-old GSP destroys his toys and devours his chews, and I'm worried about bowel obstructions. From Deason Devers on Instagram. That is a great question.
Pull up the statistics real quick.
So on our IG stories, we're using pork chomps a lot of times in those stories, as well as we have some new chews coming to our online store. Link www.standingstonekennels.com/store.
Yeah, you were close. You kind of half butchered it, but
we'll put it in the description somewhere. But we got some really great new chews coming that are going to be antler chews, as well as we're going to have pork chomps actually on our site instead of just a recommended item. Nutri-Chomps are another offshoot of pork chomps, and all of those are really awesome treats. The antlers are definitely going to last a little bit longer than the actual pork chomps, but those pork chomps are going to be great chews as well, and they're going to last a pretty decent amount of time. We actually use the little-sized pork chomps for Thunder in his crate right now to give him some settle down time, something special to have while he's in his crate instead of just empty space.
I thought this was it. I found it. So like Kat was talking about the pork chomps aspect of things, we found they have a bunch of statistics posted on their website because it is still, it looks very, very, very similar to a rawhide. The biggest difference is the actual material that's used and the process in which they prepare it is not rawhide. So
it's a baked process.
Yep. That is a big part of it. And then they're actually using, let me see if they say here, the quality of the stuff, because rawhide is typically, it's a byproduct of the leather industry. And it is made during the tanning process. When the skin is split into an inner and outer layer, rawhide manufacturers are using material that is started in the leather tanning process as a treat for your dog. So it says unlike rawhide, pork chomps are developed specifically with a dog's health in mind. Dogs need to chew, and they created a healthy alternative to rawhide. Now, a big part of it is, so they're using pork skin, pork rinds, or fried pork skin, which is something that we eat. And Kat and I've talked about as a go-to road snack because
we like them.
It's fairly healthy, high in protein. And
you just got to watch the sodium content sometimes.
Sodium, but It says that our patent process removes 70% of the pork fat, resulting in a tasty and healthy dog chew. Now, the best part about that, which goes directly with your question, is after 24 hours, 99.9% of the pork chomp is digested. So there's drastically less of an issue with any kind of bowel obstructions or anything along those lines, because the body is very easily able to digest it. We have never had any issues with pork chomps, but I'm sure that there's the potential something someday could happen, but the likelihood is drastically less, as they're a much healthier and easier to digest treat for the dogs.
Yes, which actually leads into the last question from Sue Fox, who's actually also a patron. So thank you for your question,
Hi, Sue.
I want to know about dental care. When do you introduce? What do you use? How often do you clean teeth? So we actually don't do specific teeth brushing with our dogs, but we do offer them a lot of the chews that we were just talking about, the pork chomps and antlers and things like that are going to be pretty abrasive and scrape a lot of that plaque off, as well as, we're feeding Eukanuba's large breed performance food that has an additive that helps with the plaque building up. And then every once in a while, we do take our dogs in for some dentals. Muddy had a dental
on occasion.
a couple
we do a
years
dental,
ago.
But we don't have to do very many of them.
We don't. And honestly, she had a dental because she had to have a tooth removed because
she ended up
of
with
a foreign body infection.
Yeah. It was, it migrated. It started in her tooth. A seed got caught up in her tooth, and it worked all the way through her gum line and then came out her cheekbone, like the skin, obviously not through her bone, but it popped out here. And I found that and went, started on antibiotics, and then realized that the tooth kind of looked funny too when we were doing our standard checkups. And it's one of those things that can hide very easily be there for a long time. And I took her into our vet, and he said, yeah, we need to take this tooth out.
It couldn't be saved. It was infected, and we didn't want that to cause more problems and infect the bone of the jaw or anything like that. So the better option was to remove that tooth altogether.
Remove the tooth, put her on antibiotics.
And then since she was already sedated for that procedure, we were like, let's do a dental. But honestly, for most of our dogs, we don't have to do that because of the way that they take care of their teeth from the dog food as well as the treats and chews that they're eating. So
the key with chews, and I think the biggest mistake that people make, is you end up with dogs that, and this was mentioned before, chews through everything, destroys everything. Well,
that was part of the question, actually.
Love to destroy stuff. They love to chew things up. And imagine if you were to say, this is my project, right? I'm going to do this thing to entertain myself. You dogs are fairly simple-minded, and the chew bone is a treat, but as well as it's something to keep them focused. They're working dogs. They want to be actively doing something. And your job is to move this sand pile. So it won't be fun, but it's moving a sand pile from point
Sounds
A
like a
to point
terrible
B.
thing to do.
Okay,
we actually
come up
have
with something.
We actually have a sand pile.
Yeah,
so.
Moving sand is horrible, but we'll come up with something better, something you would want to do.
I don't know where you're going with this story. Something I want to do, definitely not move sand.
Anything. We can make this work with anything. Come on.
Read a book?
Okay. So let's say
move sand or read a book. Come on, people.
See, the game and everything else is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, like maybe I'm excited about the physical activity and moving the sand, building some muscle, getting a good sweat on.
So I would say by next week's YAWA, that pile of sand is going to be moved, since Ethan's looking forward to that.
Sure. I'll move it across the driveway. Whatever. So you're going to read your book, right? Mm-hmm. You love reading books.
Yes.
Dogs love chewing on bones. Okay.
Okay.
So you love reading books. This is the example. You start reading your book and you turn the page and you read it. And this is the most enjoyable book you've ever read. And then you turn the page again and you keep reading and you keep reading.
And pretty soon I've stayed up until 3 a.m. trying to finish this amazing book.
And you keep reading. Yep. And you've tried to stay up till 3 a.m. and then you keep reading. And this is the book that never ends. Every time you flip a page, there's a whole long list of pages. So you are now 10,000 pages in, and you get to the point where you're like, I'm done reading. I just am to a point where I can't do it anymore. It will happen at some point.
Oh, for sure. My eyes will be tired. I'll be tired.
Yes. So the same thing can happen with the dogs. Even though this treat is amazing and everything else, they like to, you like to finish the book eventually and then start a new one or something, I would assume.
Yes.
The dogs love to finish the chew bone so that they can start another one later. And we like to see, the dogs love to destroy things, and we want to get to the point where they don't actually destroy things, and it takes time for them to chew it up. So we get the biggest bone that we can find, or the biggest chew bone. And then the dog looks at it and goes, I can't destroy that.
We actually did that with Sammy.
Yes. Sammy would be the prime example of that.
Crazy
so we went
Sammy.
from, we got her a Kong, because Kongs are indestructible. Greatest toy of all time.
She chewed it up.
She chewed it up. Yep, chewed it up immediately. I took it back to the store. I was like, hey, maybe this one was defective. It says greatest toy, indestructible, yada, yada. We've had it for 20 minutes. It's chewed in half. They said, huh, go get another one. So we got another one. We
got the black Kong.
No. I got another red one. Took it home.
Okay.
By the time I got home, same thing. She'd figured it out too, so it took even less time. 15 minutes, gone. Chewed in half, not gone, but chewed in half.
Yeah.
So then I went back and they said, you must need the upgrade. Go black, because it's stronger.
Yeah, the black, the super duper indestructible Kongs.
Yep. So we did that. We went up a size, because we had originally got maybe the medium based off the weight recommendations. We went up a size. Now we're at the bigger size, and the black Kong, she goes home, she chews it in half. And I went back and they said, well, try this. So I gave her another one in the store. I gave it to her. And she was like, chewed it in half. And they went, oh, you need to move to these tire biters. They're the best. So I got this tire biter. This thing was like 10 inches. It's like
thick.
Yes, this is like a dang dinner plate. And it was a tire, thickness, everything else. I gave it to her and she was like, chew. I can't destroy this. I'm not interested anymore. And she never touched it.
No, that was over.
So the key is to find a chew bone that your dog actually can destroy. A reasonable amount of time would be anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours of working at it, depending on the dog. And get that size appropriate chew bone, give them to them on a regular basis. It's a great distractor. It's a great mental stimulant and a great time waster and a great way to clean teeth. That was where I was going with all of that.
Full circle.
Teeth cleaner, pick the right bone for your dog.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. That last question turned into a long, convoluted story.
It's the only way that they work.
It is. That's how that happens. So thank you guys for all your questions. We will be back shortly with our next part 2 of this week's YAWA.
Thanks, guys.